I mean, a lot of the media is actually the opposition party. They're so biased, and really it's a disgrace. Some of the media is fantastic and fair, but so much of the media is opposition party. They're very dishonest people.
Well, you've heard that before. That was President Trump earlier today at the White House, once again referring to the press as the, quote, opposition party. It comes as there seems to be a struggle within the larger media over just how to exactly cover this unorthodox presidency. Reuters editor-in-chief Stephen Adler going so far as to provide his journalists with the do's and don'ts list. And among the advice, do become ever more resourceful and do give up on handouts and worry less about official access, he says, but don't pick unnecessary fights or make the story about us, and don't take too dark a view of the reporting environment. Earlier this week, Adler added some interesting case studies his journalists might use as guides. Watch this.
It's hard to be a good journalist. It's really hard to be a great journalist. And in this environment, you have to be. So I'm thinking, though, you know, we cover Duterte, we cover Sisi, we cover Putin, you know, all around the world. We cover Erdogan. All around the world, you face these challenges. And so there is a playbook for that.
There is a playbook for that. Chris Stirewalt, Fox News politics editor, Jessica Tarlov, Democratic pollster, and Charles Hurt, political columnist for the Washington Times. Welcome all. Good to have you here tonight. So, Chris, there's a playbook for that, and it's written in Turkey and Russia. Just cover President Trump the same way you do those people.
I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to say that what he's trying to say there, and if you read the written version, what he's trying to say is, don't freak out, people, okay? We are in a situation where the government, we had an administration before that was hostile towards the press sometimes extremely so. Now we have one that is more hostile towards the press. But don't freak out. If we can cover Putin, for goodness sakes, we can cover Trump. I read him as saying, calm down, don't take too dark a view, do your job, and you can get through this.
So, Jessica, we've heard stories about CNN saying that they're being frozen out, and reporters saying that they're not getting the access that they believe they should have. What do you think?
Well, I think if you look at the feud between Jim Acosta and Donald Trump, you can see that happening. Donald Trump also went after CNN for the report that Jake Tapper put out there about the information on what role Russia had played in the election. And we know that Donald Trump has called CNN fake news for months now, and he made that a principal part of this campaign. So I do understand CNN being concerned. And as Chris said here, I take this as guidance for reporters to make sure that Reuters can continue to be as resourceful and fair as they have been. They're in over 100 countries, and I think they're generally known to be pretty unbiased. So I think that this note to his staff and his comments are actually incredibly important moving forward. Treating the media as the opposition, it's dangerous, and that is something that a Putin would say. Now, of course, Donald Trump is not Vladimir Putin. There are humanitarian crisis issues that certainly we don't have going on in this country, but I understand the concern, and it's certainly that of CNN's.
Charlie, is there an effort to freeze out the press on the part of the Trump administration, and what do you think of this response?
Well, I think that without any doubt, there's an effort by the Trump administration to manhandle the press, but with good reason. I mean, when what Jessica just mentioned, the CNN report, it was not a false report about Russian ties. It was an Oppo research dump. Filled with just ridiculous claims that were completely unsubstantiated.
The BuzzFeed report and the CNN report were different, and Trump conflated them, and Sean Spicer did, and Kellyanne Conway, to be able to use that against CNN.
Whatever, whether it was CNN or BuzzFeed or whoever, the story was treated as if it was an actual story. And this is why the media manages to have an even lower approval rating in America than politicians do. And obviously a big reason why Donald Trump did so well in the election is because he beat the living daylights out of the media every single day. And another thing, the Reuters advice, you mentioned, Martha, don't pick unnecessary fights, do stories about things that matter to people. Well, these are the same people who gave us the whole crowd size story, which was absolutely ridiculous, where they had a photographer climb because the elevator was broken in the Washington Monument. The poor guy had to climb 500 steps to get to the bottom, to get to the top of the Washington Monument, so he could take a picture and compare it to 2008. And this is the dumbest story that has ever been written, and people don't care about this stuff, and it's just picking a fight.
I'm just watching Chris Stirewalt go side glance on that whole thing a little bit.
I can't see that, but I would like to see that.
Chris, go ahead.
Well, look, we are accustomed to, as journalists, the fact that the government generally doesn't like us. They don't want to make our job easier. That's what they do because they want to get their agenda forward. This is not a new space. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, generally hostility is your starting point when it comes to when reporters are trying to cover you. This is different. There is more here because Trump is good at, as Charles points out, making us into scapegoats, making us into a whipping boy for what they're doing. And also it helps because even when criticism is legitimate, even when inquiry or accountability is legitimate, you can tell your supporters, don't listen to them, listen to me. Yeah. That's always helpful for the government, and now it's Donald Trump's government.
It reminds me of the discussion we had earlier about the Senate and about Congress. I mean, at some point, does somebody seek a bit of higher ground? Because there is a purpose, obviously, for the press. We ask the questions. We hold people accountable. We look at what they said they would do as president, and we measure whether or not that is happening. And when things slip away, you have to make sure that those stories are investigated, Jessica. But there is this antagonistic attitude on some of the press that they're not going to give him any breathing room at all. And maybe he set that environment up during the campaign. But how do we get to a place where there's some sort of comedy, or is that never going to happen?
Well, I'm hopeful that it will happen, and I think it's going to take an advisor within the Trump administration, someone very close to him. It's obviously not going to be Steve Bannon, who told the New York Times something similar to what President Trump said about the media being the opposition, to say, you've got to calm down here, and the press can be a very good thing for us as well. I mean, we see that the Trump administration releases those highlights from the Sunday interviews, right? Every time that something happened that's good, he's all over it. If there's a poll that's favorable, he wants to talk about it nonstop. So that doesn't mean we should just give flattering coverage, of course, but I think it's going to take someone close to him to drive him in this direction. And I used to think that Kellyanne Conway might have been that voice of reason, but the alternative facts scenario has complicated my view of that.
Well, they feel burned by many of these stories, and I think there is time to repair that relationship to the point where you can get it to a place where both sides are giving the people what they need, which is accurate information. So, Charlie, thank you very much. Jessica, good to have you here. Chris, thank you very much as always, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
So there is some new reaction tonight to a new